Alright, everybody. Welcome back, welcome back. So, guess what we're reading? Sort of a lot, sort of a lot. I've been thinking about it today, and I was like, you know what? Let's read some cool military battle stuff. So, page 40. The Prophet fell to the ground as a result of these blows and was helped up by Talha. At this moment, the few Muslims left with the Prophet counterattacked fiercely and drove the Quraysh back. Saad dropped his bow, drew his sword, and rushed at his brother, but the latter outran him and took shelter in the Quraysh ranks. Saad was later to say that he had never wanted to kill a man so badly as he wanted to kill his brother Utbah for wounding the Prophet. Dang, brother against brother, right? It's interesting. There was again a little respite in which the Prophet wiped the blood from his face. As he did so, he said, "How can a people prosper who color the face of their Prophet with blood, while he calls them to their Lord?" Because people are insane. People are insane. That's why. People are insane. Abu Ubaidah, who was a bit of a surgeon, tried to pull out the two links which had dug into the Prophet's cheekbone. Finally, he had to use his teeth to pull them out. I remember that. And in the process lost two of his teeth. He later became known among the Arabs as Al-Asram, i.e. the one without incisors. Oh, I see. Yeah, they must have been deep. But didn't they have why didn't they use like a knife? Just use like how you open an oyster? Maybe it wouldn't work. I don't know. I'm not a surgeon. During the respite, the Prophet regained his strength and recovered from the physical shock of his wounds. An African lady by the name of Ayman, who had once nursed the Prophet in his childhood, stirred near him. From the Quraysh ranks, a man by the name of Haban bin al-Arqa slowly walked up within bow range, and fitting an arrow to his bow, shot in the direction of the lady who was standing with her back to him. The arrow struck Iman in her backside. Haban found this terribly funny and roared with laughter as he turned and began to walk backwards. Doesn't he get killed? Yeah, I think I remember this. The Prophet saw what had happened and was deeply angered. He took an arrow from his quiver and gave it to Saad. "Shoot that man," he ordered. Saad fitted the Prophet's arrow to his bow and, taking careful aim, fired at the infidel, hitting him in the neck. This time the Prophet laughed. Yes, I remember that. Busted. The Quraysh now started their last onslaught with violent assaults against the Prophet from all directions. The cordon formed by the companions was able to hold the attack at practically all points. The cordon, huh? But at one place it was breached, and Ibn Kayma broke through again and rushed towards the Prophet. This man was one of those who had struck the Prophet with stones in the previous phase of the attack. Near the Prophet and a bit to his right stood Musab bin Umair and a lady by the name of Umara. This lady had given up her task of carrying water to the wounded and picking up a sword and a bow from one of the dead. Had actually taken part in the recent fighting. Now that's cool, right? She's like, you know what? Getting the water is obviously an important duty, but this dead man don't need that bow. Let me pick it up and get to slashing. That's female power. She had brought down one horse and wounded one unbeliever. Ibn Kaymiyyah mistook Musab for the Prophet and rushed at him. Musab was waiting for him with drawn sword, and they began to duel. After a few passes, Ibn Kaymiyyah struck Musab bin Umair and killed him with a deadly blow. Bye-bye. As he fell, Umara rushed at Ibn Kaymiyyah and struck him on the shoulder with her sword. Ibn Kaymiyyah wore a coat of mail, and since the blow lacked the power of muscle behind it, it did no damage. In return, Ibn Kaymiyyah struck the lady on her shoulder with his sword, but as it was a hasty blow, it did not kill her. It just made a deep gash in her shoulder, as the result of which the lady fell and was unable to move for some time. Ouch. I wonder... Yeah, so where did she hit him, though? On the shoulder. Could go for his testicles or his eye or his stomach. But he probably had a male too, though. Depends what kind of armor he had. This is dang. As soon as Umara fell, the infidel saw the Prophet standing by himself and rushed at him. He raised his sword and struck a savage blow at the Prophet's head. The sword cut a few links in the Prophet's chain helmet but was unable to penetrate it. Deflected by the helmet, the sword continued in its thrust and landed on the Prophet's right shoulder. Dude, imagine what it would feel like. You got some. Okay, boom. You got it right here on your head, right? And then you feel something again on your shoulder. The constant, like, close interactions with death definitely is gonna, like, just infuse you with a whole different type of energy, right? The violence of the blow was such, and the power of muscle behind it so great, that the Holy Prophet fell into a shallow ditch just behind him. Men are strong, man, especially back then. You know? It's like, it's kind of funny. Like, you see a lot of these hipster guys with their skinny pants on and their punk rock hair, their little tiny arms, they get knocked over by a fat riot cop. Meanwhile, you have the Prophet and these dudes just going at it, you know, and it's just wow. I mean, the type of testosterone they had back then. From here he was later lifted up by Ali and Talha. Seeing the Prophet fall, Ibn Kamiya turned and rushed back to the Quraysh, shouting at the top of his voice, "I have killed Muhammad! I have killed Muhammad!" This shout carried across the battlefield and was heard by Quraysh and Muslim alike. It broke the spirit of the Muslims, and most of them turned and fled towards Mount Uhud. A few Muslims, however, decided that if the Messenger of Allah was dead, there was no point in their living on. They rushed at the Quraysh cavalry, determined to sell their lives as dearly as possible, but were cut down in no time by Khalid and Ikramah. Interesting. Here, Khalid killed his third man, Rafa bi Waqash. Like I said before, it's interesting, that the record of who he killed and who was, and the people who were killed by him is taken down in history. As the main body of the Muslims fled to the hills, most of the Quraysh turned to loot the dead. Oh, yeah, that's true. And the Muslims defending the Holy Prophet now found that none of the Quraysh remained near them. The temptation of loot proved as strong for the Quraysh as it had proved for a little while before the Muslims. You gotta wonder, though, how much... Like, if I'm a soldier, right, and I'm in the ranks, most soldiers, I don't think, wearing a bunch of gold and expensive jewelry into battle. And if they're smart soldiers, they're not going to carry too much on them. So what is it that they're taking, I wonder? To take the swords, you're going to sell it to a blacksmith who's going to melt it down and craft something else? I mean, it's super hot, I mean, what are you going to sell? But it's in the camp, though, right? But gold, maybe? I don't know. Wonder what it is they wanted so bad that would tempt them to break their ranks. Finding his way clear, the Prophet, surrounded by the survivors of his group, withdrew towards the defile in the valley. In this withdrawal, a few of the Quraysh followed the Prophet but were beaten off, and one or two of them were killed by the companions. Khalid saw the movement of the Prophet's group towards the mountain pass, but made no attempt to intercept it, for he was busy pursuing the main body of the Muslim infantry. Thus the Prophet had no difficulty in reaching the defile, and the group climbed the steep slope of the spur, where it formed a rocky bluff about 400 feet high. On the east edge of the defile, here the Prophet stopped in a cleft in the rock to survey the tragic panorama which stretched before him. The tragic panorama, man, right? Just all that. Just death. And birds squawking for more food. One of the group of 30 who had fought with the Prophet in the preceding few actions, only 14 remained, and most of these were wounded. 16 of them had fallen in defense of the Prophet and in the way of Allah. Well, it's not bad numbers. I mean, you lost some, you win some, right? The point is that not all of them are dead, right? 400 feet high, a rocky bluff. Steep slope of the spur, man, climbing up that. Such strong people. So Khalid killed Rafi bi Waqash.